Welcome everyone to grant training. Thank you so much for pivoting with the weather. I feel like we need to be showing that video if those of you that are of a certain age that are Friends fans that have the whole Ross trying to move, pivot, pivot, pivot. That's how my whole week has been. So thank you for pivoting and coming online with us today. You'll hear more about how the training is going to look with the split between the two, because we know that nobody in their right mind likes to sit on Zoom for like 4 hours on a Saturday, even though it's a snow day. So we split this up into a couple of sessions. You'll hear more about that later. But I want to first start off by saying thank you to our training team who's going to put this on today, led by our DRFC, past District Governor Pat Borowski, and a bajillion other people that she will introduce later. I want to say welcome to our District Governor-elect Ravi, who I saw on, as well as District Governor nominee Peter, District Governor nominee designee, hot off the press as I made the announcement on like Christmas Eve or maybe the eve of Christmas Eve, Sherry Maya. So welcome to the team. I'm excited to have everyone here. And I this morning was like, you know what? I'm going to randomly just jump on and upgrade my Zoom account to allow up to 1,000 people. And I'm glad I did that because I was blocked at 100 and we're at 113 people at 10:33. So look at me being an early adopter and thinking this through. So very excited about that. Today is January 11th, which is National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. This is January's National Human Trafficking Prevention Month. You read about it in the newsletter. Hopefully some of you are wearing blue today, and we'll post on social media, #WearBlueDay, to help raise awareness about human trafficking here in our local communities and around the world. Here locally, we have in our district, we have a Rotary Action Group Against Slavery. That's a district action group against slavery led by Juanita Ballinger. And if you or your club is looking for a speaker or looking for a project, please reach out to Juanita or me. We would be happy to help you guys help raise awareness and promote prevention education in your local community as well. We do have some upcoming events that I wanted to make sure were on your calendars and on your agenda. I sent an email out about them earlier this week, but I want to make sure, just in case you missed that email, that you also sought to help promote it throughout your club and get it on your own calendar. We have upcoming the Multi-District Project Fair on January 30th from 7 to 9 p.m. This has 8:30 on the flyer. I know it'll go till 9 with questions at the end. It is via Zoom. It is a great way to hear about 6 projects in Bolivia that we can partner with. My husband and I and Xiao Yin from the NASA's Club went on a wheelchair delivery project in the end of October, beginning of November. And we saw just so many needs while we were there and saw so many opportunities for our district to be able to participate in projects down there. So hopefully today, as you're on this training, you'll go, hey, maybe we should go on that call and see if we can get some ideas for projects. So whether you're delivering wheelchairs to be able to provide mobility to people and freedom and hope, to helping with a pediatric burn center, with a diabetes center. There's projects for child and maternal health with a NICU unit that is not even anywhere near a NICU unit that needs help. Hearing aids for kids. There's a recycling program. There's lots of projects that are grant ready, that are ready to go. So if your club or you or your business or your church or other organization wants to get involved with, this is a chance to be able to learn more how to be able to help affect another community right here. So, well, by right here, I mean on our side of the world. So excited about that. That's again on January 30th. You can go out to either DAC-DB to register, or you can go out on our website, I get my website to pop over, to be able to register for it as well. And that's where you'll get the Zoom link. You can feel free to share it with anybody you want around the world. Please promote it everywhere. So that's on January 30th. On February 1st is our 2025 Peace Building Conference being presented by our E-Club of Global Peace Builders. We would love to have you come to that. It is an in-person event from 9 to 3 in Spotsylvania at the Stevenson's Ridge, the beautiful Stevenson's Ridge facility. They have an incredible speaker lined up with having Michael Collins there. He's the executive director for the Americas Institute for Economics and Peace. If you have been to one of their conferences in the past,
Any idea why
it's amazing. We'll come back to you in a minute. But it is going to be an amazing event. If you've been to them before, you know how interactive they are. And if you haven't been to one, you should go to this one here. It's also open to non-Rotarians. So if you have an Interact Club, if you have people in your life that you would like to go learn more about how to build positive peace in a divided world, this is a chance to be able to do that. And then the last thing that we have that's related to the
Yeah, I got that.
somebody please mute. There we go. And so the last event is on February 9th. If you're a Caps fan, or I guess a Utah fan if you want to go root against the Caps, but we have our in polio game at the Washington Capitals. Tickets are available right now. You can get information on DACDB. It'll be up on our website next week as well. So we'll have that information out there if you want to go out and buy tickets. It's a 12:30 game, so it is on the Super Bowl, but you'll be home in time for the pregame festivities for the Super Bowl as well. If you go to the game, you get you'll be there. You'll get the beanie for as part of your ticket, as well as $5 tip your ticket cost goes to In Polio Now, which obviously is our biggest initiative of our beautiful Rotary Foundation. So those are the upcoming events. If you have 10 or more people from your club or in your world that want to go, you can reach out to Brian, whose information is on DACDB, or Jim, whose information is on DACDB, and he will help you get the tickets without paying the extra fees for buying them one at a time. So that's everything I have. I hope to see you at all of these events. I'm excited that we have so many of you here today. And with that, I toss it back to Pat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, District Governor Amelia, and a lot of exciting things are going on in our district. Sherry, if you would please put up the slides and we can start going. And if everybody could put themselves on mute, we have 128 and still counting. So it's going to be a very lively group. Again, if you've just entered, if you've just come in, please make sure you put your name, club name, and your email address in the chat box in order for your club to receive credit for having attended part 1 of the mandatory grant package. There will be 2 more programs, and scheduling for those will be. Now, Sherry, I'm not sure. Can I advance, or you have to advance the slides for us?
No, I'll need to advance. So just tell me when you want me to go to the next slide.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide. And again, thank you so much. What we hope we'll accomplish today are the objectives, and that is to give you a clear outline of qualification and requirements. Grant, and this is a general presentation. We are speaking to the things that all Rotary grants require that are fundamental. Grants do and don'ts, group Q&A. Please make sure. Oh, I don't know why there's an echo on my screen. All right. Takeaways are, we hope you'll see as a result of this, your clubs are going to have more successful grants. You're going to receive access to a resource folder where all these materials and then some will be there. We are outlining, in the materials that you receive, you're going to have like a list and a better explanation of what makes successful grants, etc. The do's, checklist, don't checklist, your timing checklists for each of the types of grants. Let's go to the next slide. Everybody put yourself on mute, please. Okay. There are a number of different grants. Some of you know all of these, and some of you may be seeing some of these grants for the first time. The district, the clubs in the district have participated and actively participate in all of these types of grants. You're most familiar with the district block grant, and out of the district block grant, this is where clubs are able to receive money for their approved district grant project. Global grants, again, we're very familiar with that overseas. Global grants of scale, Rotary is trying to move towards getting very large grants, starting at 150,000 or 250,000 and above. Disaster grants, Global Scholar grants, we just approved 5 for this year, and we believe we'll be able to do 5 next year, and our Peace Fellow grant. And then there are specialized project grants. So all of these grants have to be reviewed by the district first. That is a requirement of Rotary. And the district must also verify that each club is authorized to participate in any Rotary grant. So I know we get a lot of questions of why do I have to listen to anything other than district grants, because that's all we do. That is because the money comes from the Rotary International Foundation Fund. And there are requirements, which Travis is going to speak to later, that are incumbent upon all of us. And you may not be involved in a global grant today, but 3 months from now, you may be approached and you may want to participate in a global grant, not necessarily lead it, and you can't participate unless you qualify. While these grants have different requirements, there are many things that go into what constitutes successful grants. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is just brief, but address community needs. That community can be local community for district grants, or it applies to your global communities when we're talking about global grants. You have to, and you can see, consulting, have a clear rationale. That's one thing that many times is missing. The clearer, even with a district grant, the clearer that you can express what you want to do, the better. It's easier to tell you if it needs to have some amendments. It's easier to look at it and say yes. So the test is, once you've written it, go to someone who's not involved in it, ask them to read what you wrote. And if they go, oh yeah, I get what you want to do, you've met your challenge. Sustainability, this is important. Even in district grants, no Rotary Foundation money goes to grants that are one and done shots. And so it has to be something that is sustainable, that the community can continue to participate and potentially build upon in subsequent years. Has measurable goals. Let's go to the next one. And involve with the community, aligns with the Rotary areas of focus. This is going to apply to all grants across the board. Has a budget. You meet your compliance requirements, and you report your successes. This has been added because Rotary wants us to be communicating the wonderful things that our clubs and districts do in the world. And with that, I want to turn it over now to Bob Jansen, because he is going to talk to us about one of the longest running and most successful homegrown global grants that we have in this district. And it is emblematic of the 12 points we have presented already. And additionally, you're going to find a lot of clues, a lot of ideas that are going to help you no matter what type of grant you get involved with. Bob, with that, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Pat, and good morning, everybody. It's a real honor to be here and be able to speak and share with you. So to Pat's point, since I've been in Rotary, and really what brought me to Rotary is our district's Strategic Water Alliance. And you may say, what is that? It's been now, 12, 13, 14 years, where the Dulles Club did a well in sub-Saharan Africa. It was successful. They did more projects. Clubs joined with them. And right now, our Water Alliance consists of 24 clubs in our district. And we focus on water and sanitation, hygiene, education, that area of focus. and are focused on working in the developing world to bring clean water, proper sanitation to communities that don't have it. And we've been around, as I say, I think since 2007. We've completed about 50 projects in over 5 countries to the tune of about $1 million in Rotary funds. So just a quick background on the success of this district in just one area of our area of focus. But what I wanted to do very quickly, what Pat asked me to do, was touch on what she just talked about as it relates to a grant we're planning on doing. Now, I've said we've been in 5 different countries. We're planning now our next grant, likely for next Rotary year, to be here in the United States. And we're partnering with Mike Pittman of the Matthews Club and his team. We had a wonderful conversation with Ron and Bill and Henry and Nancy yesterday. So Sherry, if you can go back 2 slides, and I'll be very brief, go back to those highlighted points, if you could, just go back one more. So let's talk about this next, hopefully, global grant. And by the way, to do a global grant, you have to have a host club where the project is being performed and an international club that sponsors it. Now you might say, okay, well, this project's going to be in Matthews, Virginia, in our district, so they'll be the host club. But who will be the international club? Well, most of the Water Alliance work over the last X amount of years has been in the country of Zambia, which is in sub-Saharan Africa. We've worked, as I say, in 4 other countries, but they are going to be the international club. What's great about Rotary, as you know, and the foundation, is we work together as Rotarians wherever we are in the world and help each other's communities. So the clubs in Zambia, who we know very well, have been dying to help us in the United States. So that's an interesting point. But very quickly, and the presentation gets into these in a little more detail, so I won't spend a lot of time, but 1, 2, and 3, assessing the community, local experts, designed within the community. We're relying on our partners in Matthews, Virginia for this. They are the experts. They know what they need. It's not me to tell them what they should do. Just like when we do international grants, it's not me to tell a country abroad what they need. The local folks need. So that's a real big thing if you jump into these global grants. Always ask the people where the project is happening what their true needs are. And that includes having a clear rationale. The 5 and 6 are the big things I want to emphasize, that Rotary emphasized. In all the years we've been doing global grants, we've watched Rotary introduce these and prioritize them. When I went to the International Convention in Hamburg and attended all the water and sanitation breakouts, Rotary said to me and to everybody there, we're tired of being a charity and going and building a project and having it fail 5 years later. So this sustainability and having measurable goals is the most important thing you can do. And when I was talking to Matthews, I said, great, we could maybe create some water availability, some sanitary, but who's going to own and maintain it? Is it the Public Works Department of the county? And so that's going to be a big emphasis of us as a team to make sure whatever we do lasts forever. So Sherry, go to the next slide and we'll just hit on the remaining points. We talked about involving the community. The area of focus that I'm thinking about is water and sanitation. 9 and 11 are very important. Pat touched on them a little bit, and I know we'll touch on them some more. But you need to be a club in good standing. You know, your club needs to be up on all their dues. If you've been involved in grants, you need to be in good standing on any of your grants, be it any grant, district or global. You have to make sure you've reported when you're supposed to report. You can't have anything outstanding. Those are very important. Have a budget. Obviously, a project has a budget. And then you're right, Pat said 12 is, you know, for years, Rotarians are very modest, humble people, and they don't say what they're doing. And we do need to change that and I think tell the world what we're doing, because it is pretty remarkable. So I'll leave you with with hopefully an inspirational message here. One thing I wanted to do, and Ralph, hopefully you'll be proud of me. One thing you'll see on this presentation, every slide has this lovely Rotary Foundation emblem with the two hands and the doves. And keep in mind that nothing we talk about this morning is possible without the foundation. It is the backbone that gives us Rotarians the ability to do any of these grants. And my experience in Rotary has been phenomenal because I've participated in these global grants, and every 12 year I've been a Rotarian. So I'm going to leave you with this inspiration, which will hopefully inspire you to support the foundation. I know you probably already do, but also to maybe consider doing a grant. As Amelia said, there's so many needs in the world. So this is a quote from Sir Clem Renouf, who was the RI president in the late 70s. He's from Australia. And just so you know, historically, he's the guy who called John Seaver in Bethesda and came up with the polio idea. But here was his quote: Rotary takes ordinary men and women and gives them extraordinary opportunities to do more with their lives than they ever dreamed possible. And I am a specific example of that quote. And I encourage all of you to enjoy today's presentation, and afterward, think big and get involved. So with that, Pat, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Bob. And again, I want to underscore, even though Bob is speaking about a global grant, everything Bob talked about and the things we outlined in the 12 relate to your district grants. It even relates to when we work with Chris Elliott on the Global Scholar Grants and what clubs should be doing to get their scholar applicants prepared. With that, let's go to the next slide. And Andrew, who is our senior grants chair, many of you know him. Take it away, Andrew, for the next couple of slides. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. And Sheila will be monitoring that too.
All right, good morning, everyone. Great to see so many. I think this is the most we've had that I can recall on in one of these sessions. So this is always good to have interest in, even though, yes, it's required, but there has to be some level of interest as well. So just, yeah, I've been working with global grants for a few years now. And it seems like whenever we have these sessions, there's usually one or two or three Rotarians that call me up afterwards the following week or 2 weeks, and they have an idea, and then they eventually bring that idea to fruition. So I hope that that happens with this go around as well. So basically, every year, the Rotary Year starts July 1. We as a district, everyone, all the Rotarians on this call, we have basically a pot of money within these grants to spend. Spend on district grants, spend on global grants. Within global grants, we have humanitarian grants, kind of what Bob was just talking about. We have global scholars, and we have vocational grants, which is also what Mish Peters is also on this morning. And she's done several vocational. So there's different types of global grants, and not one is trumps the other one, but they all can be done. It's very flexible. But there's a pot of money that we have to spend every year. Some people say, what happens if we don't spend it? Well, it rolls over to the next year. At the end of 5 years, we could end up giving more money to the Peace Center or polio. So we've never had a problem of having too much money. So when you're first going to be, when it always starts with, an idea, either from someone in your club, or a lot of times you're going to be contacted from another club, another Rotarian. I woke up this morning before I got out of bed. There was an email from someone, I'm not sure what country they were from, but soliciting our district DDF funds. Please help us on a water project. It's $170,000. We need you all to give us $20,000, please. So it's a very fluid situation. So you just, if you do get contacted, you know, there's a chance that you could be a part of another group, another Rotary club that's participating. I know one club this year, well, it was Vienna. I know Sheila's on. I don't know who else from Vienna's on, but you know, in December they had allocated money for an international grant. Well, they hopped on to another grant that was multi-club, and you know, they did a very large water project in Ghana. So, you know, there's sometimes you take it on and do it yourself and follow the process online, which is very, you know, the steps are literally 1, 2, 3. I think there's exactly 10 steps or 12. It is one follows the other. It is not too difficult. Um, you know, a lot of people that do it, they just are like, oh, I didn't know it was going to be that. I say the word easy, but it's not very complicated. So but it does take some doing. There is leg work, and again, you need to, you know, follow the community needs before you do anything. Um, within you know, I think the best resources when you're going through this process are to use people that have written grants before. Uh, Tim Long from Tyson's Corner has written, I think, 3 grants. Jill Lehman in Gainesville Haymarket's written at least 2 grants, I think 3. Bob Jansen, who's on him a few minutes ago, he's written several grants. So Mish Peters, she's written several. So you know, if you talk to people that have done written grants and have had a positive experience and have made a difference, those are the ones that, you know, I would try to partner with. And that's, you know, and again, before you do anything, as Bob said, you have to, you know, it does start with the community. You can't just, that was one mistake we made 15 years ago. We're like, oh, this school doesn't have water. Let's put a well. All right, this school is getting a well. Go back 3 years later, school shut down, no well. Um, I'm not going to say that's never going to happen again, but the chance of that happening now is very low because you have to have a plan in place of how whatever project you do is going to be, you know, have money coming in the future. Are they going to charge to use the well? Is the municipality, is the district education board secretary, Deb's office, are they going to be caring for this project? So the sustainability piece is critical. Next slide. All right. So again, you know, every year we go, you know, through this about, you know, what do we have to do for, you know, to, you know, to be eligible to do this, and by you showing up today, you are eligible to it. You know, there are periodic changes, but I would argue that the terms and conditions of these grants have only changed maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 times over the last 15 years. So I mean, they're not a lot of huge changes, but you know, they do change, so you just need to be abreast of that. But again, when you talk to people that have written grants and ask for assistance, then you get concerned less about the changes because you could just, you know, talk to someone who's been doing it. And then, you know, again, the engagement with other clubs. A lot of times it's multi-club, and in the real successful ones now, I say real successful, maybe some of the larger ones are also multi-district. So, you know, there's really no limits. I recommend you do start smaller. You don't go right away to $250,000, but you know, maybe you write one that's $50,000 and just, you know, do a phased approach. A lot of them, you know, are phase 1, 2, 3, 4. That way there's time to make adjustments and, you know, et cetera. Let's see. Anyway, we could probably go on to the next slide. Okay, Pat, who's gonna?
I'll go ahead and just talk about this, and then I think well, Travis, you tell me when I told which slide you come in on. I apologize.
No, I was supposed to come in on the next one. This was
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, one thing, first of all, before we go into this, I would like to open the floor to any questions that you have now. If you unmute and just ask your question. So I know there was a question for Bob as to how did you begin the thought process? And I think it was from Victor. How do you begin the thought process of identifying Matthews as a place that we could do what's called a reverse global grant under the Water Alliance?
Yeah,
And Pat, just to clarify, I'm also curious, how did you engage the country of Zambia to be an international sponsor for Matthews?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, real quick, Victor, thanks for the question. I mean, the way that came about is we have been working so many years, 17 years in Zambia. We know two clubs very well. Some of my best friends now are Zambians. And for years, we've talked about some issues we've had in the US with regard to human trafficking, with regard to opioid addiction. And they have said to us, you've been helping us with our needs. What can we do to help you? So they've been pushing us to be an international sponsor to address an issue. We hadn't taken on human trafficking or opioid, but that would be a great global grant to help this country. We learned about some potential water and sanitation opportunities in Matthews County. And so that's how that idea, all the ideas of grants come from you guys, Rotarians, who come to us and say, hey, I'm aware of a potential need. So when we learned about the Matthews opportunity and then talked to the Zambians, they said, great, water and sanitation, great, we'll help you with that. So anyway, that's how it came about. It's just a relationship we've developed for so many years.
And John has a question. John, before you ask your question, if I can just add, when you have any kind of idea for a grant, irrespective of the type of grant, contact us on the resource team. This is what we are as foundation people in the grant area. And we can help you begin to build that so that you don't do a lot of work and then suddenly file the app. And of course, Rotary requires the district to review those and approve them. And then we find out you have things in there that, will not fly. And you have to go back and redo a lot of work. So the resource people are here. John, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, it's not so much a question as a comment or two. First of all, what you just said is so important. We started a number of years ago with a project, and we had no idea where to go, and we got help from the district people. Vance was the guy in charge at the time. It also helps to have a contact in the country that you're working. Right. I lived in Uganda for a couple of years, and so I have Ugandan contacts, and we did a project or two in Uganda. One of our members of the club is from Egypt. He has contacts over there, so that helps getting things off the ground. But if you don't have those, as Bob said earlier, work with a group like ours and others who do have the contacts there. And the other thing that I wanted to say is we had a water project in mind. Boy, was it going to be a great water project. It was the latest in American technology. And we talked it over with our friends in Uganda, and they said, this is never going to work here. Who's going to repair it? So they scaled it down to a project that would work under their technology, and it's been working ever since and done great things. So it's so important to work with local people. Forget about your own ideas.
Yes.
They're developing countries that we work in. They're not developed countries.
Yes. Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah, just another note though, they used to have a thing called the Rotary projects. Now I believe it's called the Service Project Center. So, I mean, people who are interested in doing grants but don't know how to get started, if you go do a search, you'll find clubs that have put in their project. They're looking for partners, or if you're looking for partners, you can put your proposed project in there. So for clubs who are just starting out, if they don't know, well, how do I find someone or how do I start off on a project? That's one place you can start.
Thank you, Peter. And one thing I want to emphasize, and the reason we're really strongly encouraging when you have an idea, you want to do a project, whether it's domestic or whether it's international, please contact us at the district first. And the reason I say that, unfortunately, this year, we have had clubs contacted by 3 outside of our district, outside, I think all 3 were outside of the country, talking about their global grant and everything else. These clubs were eager to participate. Each one of those overtures was false. So you really need to, we're here to help you and to keep you safe, all 3. And I've only been a member since 2011, but I've never heard of this, but we had 3 this year. So they know who has money. Sometimes they'll come and ask you for money. And one of the key questions is, how much are they putting up? And you will find many times they're putting up nothing. You know? So then we have everything to lose. So please contact us. Ruth, really quickly, and then we have to move to the rest of the program.
Just a quick question. So I'm assuming then I can go on the district website and it'll have a list of the active grants so I can see if I want to partner with someone or I'm not duplicating an effort.
Yes, we are putting those lists together and hopefully they will go on the website, but you will get that in your resource folder and you'll be receiving that information tomorrow.
Thank you.
You bet.
Pat,
Okay.
why don't I pick up at this point?
Yes, Travis, you go right ahead.
Yeah, we're back to how does my club qualify? Well, the first, let me tell you first, I'm a past district governor from 2007 and 2008. I only mention that because I had the pleasure of approving the Dulles grant that was the birth of the strategic water alliance. Take great pride in that. So since
Thank you.
since that time, I've continued to serve on the foundation committee in various roles, currently as the chair of the stewardship committee. But back to what we see on the slide, the district has a responsibility for being qualified to start with. Our district governor and district leadership have to qualify and certify to the Rotary Foundation that our district is qualified, and we're responsible for supervising the clubs in the district to ensure that they adhere to the principles that the foundation's established for a grant process. If we find there are deficiencies in our clubs, it's our responsibility to generate training programs or remedial efforts to ensure that the clubs come up to standard so that they can qualify. Excuse me, just a second. Again, if there are serious issues, it's our responsibility to design remedial efforts. Sherry, next slide, please. Now, how does a club qualify? Well, to be qualified, you need to do certain things, and Bob Jansen already talked to this to some degree. We expect that the club will be current on their dues. The president-elect has got to go to the pets in their training. That's required before they can assume the role of president. And the club needs to have appointed a Rotary Foundation chair, and that should be recognized in DAC-DB. That's important. We need to have somebody that the foundation committee can correspond with. We've had troubles distributing checks to clubs in the past because we didn't have a contact officer or a contact address to send them. So it's important that the foundation responsibility is identified in DAC-DB. Now, in Club Central on the Rotary International website,
you have the capability of establishing your goals for the year. The Rotary Foundation chair and the president both have the capability to enter that information. But it's important to establish your goals early in the year, goals that are achievable but stretch. Don't assume because we've always given $10,000, we'll set a goal of $9,000 to make sure we get there. Reach out and set a stretch goal that is meaningful and gives the club something to strive for. And of course, the club needs to have met their previous requirements on prior grants. Sherry, next, please. Now, what does it take to qualify? Well, we do annual grant management training. That's required by the Rotary Foundation. We have always asked for one member of each club to attend so that the club qualifies. We're kind of upping the ante, asking for at least a couple. And the reason for that is important. People move on. You'll find on global grants, you have to identify a committee of 3 people. There's a reason for that. Because when the grant ends up 3 years down the road, if the people that originated the application aren't there, we don't have a way to write the final report. So you need some depth to ensure that there's continuity within the club. You need to be sure that all your prior grants have been satisfied. Final reports have been submitted on a timely basis. And the bottom line you see there was just mentioned just a moment ago. We're going to ask that you always, in all of your grants, as the last step, file the report with the Rotary Service Project Center. That's what Peter was just talking about. Used to be known as a Rotary Showcase. This gives notice to the rest of the world that you've done something important with a satisfactory result. But more importantly, it gives other clubs the opportunity to see that there may be some opportunities they can pursue if they may be getting in touch with you to learn how to do that. Very valuable resource, and it's going to be a requirement at the end of each of your grants. Next slide, please, Sherry. As said, my role is the chair of the stewardship committee, but stewardship is everybody's responsibility. It applies not only to the district staff, but each member of the Rotary Club involved in grant activities. We must ensure that you see that reference to compliance ratio. What that really means is Rotary Foundation monitors our reporting of our grants. If we have delinquent grants, excessive delinquent grants, it will impact on our ability to do new grants. Let's say we have 10 grants and 3 of them have delinquent reporting requirements. We're considered to be at a 70% ratio. If we fall below that, it likely will affect our ability to get other grants. And we've been at that point a number of times. It's very important that we meet reporting requirements, get reports submitted on time, get them approved. That means responding to questions that occur when they're being reviewed, and before we move on to try to do something else.
Can I pipe in with that? Just as some helpful advice?
Yes.
This is Mish. You also have to remember when you're working with other districts and other clubs that their sense of time isn't always your sense of time as well. And so making sure you try to put time in that process, so you allow your partners to also put in their information on their timeline and communicating that, because that can be different for different people.
Absolutely important. And your point is well taken. It's a two-way responsibility, both the international and the host partners are responsible for the reporting. Next slide, please.
Travis, you have one question before we move on. Latana would like to know what the timelines for reporting are.
Global grants have a very definitive timeline that require that they be reported annually as long as the grant is active and within 60 days of the termination of the report. We have specific reporting responsibilities in our district grant, and Sherry can talk to that a little bit later, but you have interim reports and final report responsibilities there. But the global grants are very definitive. It's on a strict timeline from the date that the grant is approved. Any other question? Next slide, please.
You're here.
Oh, I'm there, huh? This is what stewardship is. Leadership supervision is important. Rotarians have to be involved. Rotarian leadership. We don't do grants to turn resources over to other people. We have to do it ourselves. It includes good control of our financial resources, oversight of funds. Important if there is an irregularity crop up with the handling of monies, because it's very sensitive with Rotary International, it's very sensitive to our district. So if there is an irregularity that does pop up, it must be reported to me as the stewardship chair and to the Rotary Foundation chair as well. And then all reports should be timely. Next slide, please. Each grant must have a financial management plan, a formal management plan, whether it be a district grant or a global grant, and it should account for all of these things. It's important that we safeguard the use of the money. If it's an international grant, we have to be careful about the local laws for the handling of money. The bank account for the funds, for an international account, it typically is better for that account to be in the country where the host country. Can't always be done that way, but that's best because of money, the currency conversions and transfer of funds and that sort of thing. But the bank accounts must account for the grant funds specifically. You can't simply merge them with other club accounting funds. It's got to be discreetly identified as grant money. For a global grant, there should be a separate account identified as global grant, whatever the number is. But
Travis, can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
Just regarding these project accounts, yeah, historically they were in the host club, but some of these third world countries, they have really screwy banking laws. So they sometimes charge for, all of a sudden if $70,000 shows up in some bank account for Rotary Club, that gets people's attention. So we found that sometimes it's better to have the project account here in the United States and us pay the vendor directly. That's one thing. Number two, and it's a little bit of a splitting hairs here, but when you are funding these projects a while ago, and sometimes it's still the case, is the funds first go to the Rotary Foundation, and once all the, let's say $50,000 or $100,000 is there, then it goes to the project account. When you send to the Rotary Foundation, when you send it to there directly, there's a 5% administrative fee. That fee is waived and avoided if it goes straight to the project account. So just from a pure math standpoint, it makes it a little bit cleaner just to open up a project account, whether it's, like Travis said, in the host club or in the international club. So we're finding that a lot of these accounts that are established are, the funds go directly into these project accounts instead of to the Rotary Foundation. So anyway, just a little bit of logistics on it makes it a little bit easier and it makes it quicker to fund the project once it's approved.
Good point. But to reiterate, it's important to have formally laid out your financial management plan for that project and defines where those accounts are going to be maintained and that sort of thing. Next slide, please. This is important. You must retain all documents related to the grant for 5 years. That's a strict requirement of the Rotary Foundation. It's important to you to be able to answer questions down the road concerning issues that popped up that you weren't aware of at the time you closed the grant. They can be electronic and should be. You're going to have paper receipts from supporting the grant, and experience has shown that sometimes these receipts produced in a foreign country are not very substantial in terms of their ability to withstand time and weather, and they're not readable a couple of years down the road. So it's good to document everything electronically so that you've got access to it. They should be transparent. Rotary Foundation requires that all the information regarding your grants should be available to everybody in your club. So you should have some way that this information is available to the rest of the club to show in the event any questions arise.
Travis, can I just make a comment on the receipts? Something that's easiest, you can take your iPhone and immediately take a picture of those receipts, because especially abroad, Fred and some of the other people, Mish, et cetera, can tell you, the ink doesn't last very long on those receipts. So it's easier to take the picture, then you've got it, and make sure your receipts do have detail. Don't, so that we know exactly what this money paid for.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Well, what happens when there is non-compliance? Well, the district will disqualify the club, and if you're on an active grant, the grant may be taken from you, and you may be required to return the money back to the district or to Rotary International. Well, if there is an issue with education within the club, we can establish a short-term re-education program for a given club. We're willing to do that if you need that help. And if it's serious, the district may simply remove you from the grant program for something longer than just a year. We don't want to do that. We'd rather solve the problem, help you get back on the road. Most of our clubs don't have a problem, but it does occur every now and then. And we ask that you don't wait till it becomes a serious problem. Ask for help when the issue surfaces. Next slide, please. There is a memorandum of understanding that we're asking each club to sign. This memorandum ensures that we have an implementation plan for both global grants and for district grants. It holds clubs accountable, and it establishes these things in the MOU. It helps you identify the things that you have to do to be successful with your grant. Now, this is going to be in that information package that Pat mentioned earlier. It's going to be available to you online in DACDB. So I'm not going to show you one today, but let's go to the next slide, please. We're going to ask that both the club president and the president-elect sign the MOU. That's because you're doing the planning this year and you're going to execute it next year. In the MOU, the club agrees to the financial stewardship requirements, and the club sends, again, or agrees to send 2 members to the training each year. Now, what happens after you qualified? Well, it's good for a year. You got to do it again next year. But you must abide by the memorandum and you must report the use of the grant funds. Next, please. There are actually two MOUs. One of them is a memorandum of understanding that was directed by Rotary Foundation. We don't have any options there. That's the one we ask you to sign, the president and the president-elect. But there is an addendum to that. That's the District Rotary Foundation MOU, which principally governs the use of the district grant. But it expands on the requirements of the foundation's principal MOU. You may have additional requirements for MOUs. Clubs doing joint projects may need an MOU between themselves on who's going to do what. Certainly, if you're doing a global grant involving some other outside activity, another nonprofit organization or a commercial supporter, you need a memorandum of agreement between the grant sponsor and the supporting party. So you may have other MOUs in addition to the first two that I mentioned. So with that, I think I hand the microphone over to District Governor nominee designee Sherry.
Thank you.
Sherry,
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
before you go, I just wanted to say to Travis's point, we ask and Rotary requires, when you sign those MOUs, it is the current president that signs and the president-elect. If you have a 2-year term so that you are both the president and the president-elect, you have to sign both areas. The reason for this is it is showing that your club is obligating itself to these terms and conditions for both getting the grant and then executing the grant. So you request it under your current president and you execute it under the president-elect, which will be president the following year. Thank you.
Brad, did you have a question before we move forward? You'll need to unmute.
Not a question, but just a comment or an addition to the fact that Travis and Andrew alluded to about the project account. Just need to share my experience with the grant that was approved. And the local club opened up the project account. And we advised them, because they also have to have a contribution to the grant, to deposit their contribution direct to the project account. But they preferred to send the money to TRF because they were getting the money from the members and they wanted the members to be recognized for that contribution as part of their donations to the foundation. And that delayed because they were trying to get the members to actually pay the contribution that the club was supposed to pay to the project, but they were getting that contribution from the members. And the members wanted recognition. And the only way the members could get recognition is when that money was actually sent to the foundation. So anyway, it's just a comment that we as the international chapter, international sponsors, were kind of like frustrated and it delayed the project for, I don't know, 6 months, maybe be longer, simply because the local club just wanted to do the things the way they wanted to do them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the district grant. So Travis was talking to you about overall grant compliance, and I want to just reiterate the fact that all of the things that we talked about for the grants count for all the global grants and the district grant as well. And so you need to make sure, doing this training is important for both. And so I'm going to talk about the district grant in place of Alicia, who could not be here today. She is actually our district grant chair. So for the general grant process, After a club confirms that is qualified, the club should vote and decide what grant that you're going to apply for. You need to have a grant manager for each club grant. And the hope would be that they would report to the board each month the progress. And we want to make sure that the PI chair of your club is also involved very directly so that they know how to report about the amazing results that are going to happen. There are definitely different applications you fill out and a different kind of a process for each grant. But again, just to reiterate, the whole team is available to help you figure that out. And the easiest place to start is to ask the question and get directed to the right resource first. Be sure that you understand the funds that you need and how do you raise them. In addition to the budget, it's a great idea to seek out partners, other clubs, local nonprofits or business that will help you, and ensure that you are putting up some of your own funds. When we do a district grant, we know that the club is responsible for, I'm going to say 10%, but for some reason that number isn't registering in my head correctly. But I believe that each club puts up 10% of the actual district grant amount. In addition, there can be other requirements for global grants that you would work with the global grants chairs and Pat to determine what that would be. Rotary grants are not between the Rotary Club and the Rotary Foundation. So the club actually fills out the application, but the foundation requires that the district reviews is in the middle of that. So just be aware that every application must go through the district. And as Pat said earlier, you're well protected to do that so we can verify that it's actually a viable opportunity in a way that we can legitimately legitimately spend the funds and be compliant with all requirements. If you have an outstanding overdue grant, it's right out of the gate, you will not be able to apply for any additional grant funding. So make sure that you stay compliant with your Rotary reporting requirements. So there's a little bit of a change to the general grant process. One thing that we did that we went into DAC-DB, and that certainly did change some things that we were doing and the way that we did the grants. And I would say that for all of you who got through that grant process last year with the great help of PDG Sheila Brennan, congratulations, because you made it work. And this year, I think we're going to be even better. But it did change a little bit about how we do it. And then what it also highlighted very quickly is that if you decide on a grant project and then something falls through, or you have to change the focus or how you're going to do it, you have to get approval to do that. You cannot change your grant process or your grant project or the process or the beneficiary after the grant has been approved. It's not terribly difficult to get it changed, but you do have to have it reviewed and approved so that we can make sure that we can move forward with distributing the funds. If you have any issues in the district grant process, you have to make sure that you immediately tell Pat and the appropriate grant chair. Don't wait until you get to the end of the grant cycle and then tell us that you were unable to distribute your funds, because at that point, we have a very difficult time helping you catch up and get back into compliance. And we really will ultimately probably just end up giving the money back to the grant process. So the earlier you know that something is going awry in your grant project, the better. And we can reach in, help, get you some guidance and get your grant back on track, or maybe even some suggestions for how you could change or update that grant and make it work. Don't miss a final report deadline while trying to fix the issue, because then you've not only not spent the money in the way that you said you were going to, but you have added to your non-compliance by not actually meeting the grant reporting deadline. So just don't compound what's going on. Ask for help. There's no punishment for it not working. There is non-compliance issues that we need to work through. So ask for help, do it early, do it often, and don't miss the deadline. The district grant process for Rotary 2526, that we want to make sure that you should be using district grants for service projects that these are guidelines you execute in your local community, that they benefit a portion of that community, definitely fits within one area, one of the 7 areas of focus. I always point out to people that I help that it does not have to fit into multiple. You don't get multiple points for being in multiple areas of focus, but it does have to fit into one of the areas of focus. And we want the district grants to have visibly supporting Rotary branded service projects in our local communities. We will follow all of the Rotary Foundation guidelines for implementing the overall grant programs, and there could be limited options for the district to request TRF to use those funds elsewhere. But again, that begins with communicating with Pat what your needs might be and letting us work through that process for you. We have had in the past a couple of issues with actually delivering the district grant checks to the right place in the right time. When we ask you to make sure that your address is up to date in DACDB as a club, this is why, so that we can pull that information, compare it to our accounting system, and send the check to the right place. There is a charge if we have to do a return check and reissue you a new one. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but just make sure that you're updated prior to district grant disbursement. And I was right with the 10%. I'm glad that was the right number. So if you apply for a district grant, you are required to put in 10% of that grant amount. So if you have a $3,000, if the grant is $3,000, you have to contribute an additional $300 to your grant project, and it must be included in your total budget. So when you submit your district grant, be sure that you put in your 10% into the budget that you are creating. Clubs that operate as a group in a district grant. So if you partner with another club, we have to have a single lead club, and that lead club is really in charge of the grant. A couple things to point out. It doesn't mean that if that lead club falls down and you're a part of the grant, you're still responsible for the grant. So just to be very clear, it's not as though you hand over your money and your responsibility ends. So make sure that you're aware of that. And then you also need to send your 10% of the grant to the lead club. So you will take, if you are a part of a joint effort, you'll send your $300 to the lead club, and they will use that as part of the total 10% for the total grant amount. District grant applications must be in the DACDB system no later than May 20th. That is earlier than last year, and every year that I've done district grants. So I want to be very clear about that, and that's because of the issues, the time it takes to process it through DACDB. So be sure that you meet the May 20th deadline. Midterm reports have to be filed by February 6th. Even if you haven't completed the grant project, or even if you're just getting it ramped up, you still need to file your midterm report and let us know where you're at in the grant process. It may even be just when the grant is going to start. If you are in the process, that report just says where you're at and what's left. So you must do a midterm report. You must do your final report and have expended your funds by May 1st. So you need to be done with the grant by May 1st, finalize and complete the report and submit that. If your project is completed before then, you can obviously file a complete report as soon as it's done. So if you're done already with this year's, you can you can go ahead and do it. The midterm and the final reports are done in DACDB. I believe. Sheila, would you confirm that for me? Thank you. She's shaking her head, yes. So there's a mechanism in DACDB where you filed the initial request to do the midterm and to do the final. If we request as a district that you need to change the project, or if you have to change from the original project, you have to do so in an email so that we can get it fixed. So please don't go in and adjust your district grant inside of DACDB. You must request that to be adjusted. Very important, because we need to make sure that everything lines up and is appropriately reapproved once those changes are in. And we will let you know, Pat would let you know when the block grant has been approved, and then we will send out the checks. And the district grant check can only be mailed to the club's address that's listed in DACDB. So just be very sure that your DACDB address is correct. And Andrew, I see your hand, and then Mike, I see yours.
And Mike, yes.
Real quick, do we have a dollar amount on those? Because people are starting to get their budgets set. Do we have a dollar amount for these next grants? Number one, and number two, just like, again, for there's 100 people on this call. Again, I'm the grant person in my club. No other club came to our club and said, "Hey, partner with us for a district grant." So our club gave up $3,500 this year. So the point is either, solicit, write it yourself, or partner with another club. Otherwise, it's kind of waste. No, I wouldn't say it's wasted. The money does roll over again, but that's not really the purpose. So
Right.
even though you're the designated person today, because you maybe have to be for this session, it would be really good to be, to basically put this money to use to solve one of these areas of focus. So anyway, just that's all.
Andrew, to answer your first question, we will be all meeting later in January, and we will work all that out in terms of what is available and the terms upon which it is available. The second thing, to your point, and just to underscore, listen, partnerships are king. And if you can work together and partner together and pool your resources so that you can really have an impact as Rotary in your community, that is great. And, our club partners in some, and our club always does others. Yes, did Mike get his question asked? I'm sorry.
No, Mike's next, and then there's a couple in the chat that I'll ask or address.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a comment based on experience. One is for local district grants is that the timeline between the application, in other words, when you put forward the project, the timeline, and the actually receiving the funds can be very significant. It can be 4 or 5 months, in fact. So I've experienced sometimes the project or portions of the project have been completed by the organization we've identified prior to receiving the funds. Then you have to pivot, or what I tend to do is I make the application have multiple aspects to it, so that at least I can complete a portion of it with the funds. Sure. And then 2 years ago, what I had was I realized 4 months before the due date that the organization was not going to be able to accomplish the project. So I basically had to pivot at that point and found a new similar organization with a similar project. But the most significant to me is the amount of time between the application project and the receipt of the funds.
Mike, I understand. And here's the issue. We can't submit the district block grant application until all the clubs have cured issues that we identify in their submissions. Because these are not submitted to Rotary International individually. They are in the district block grant package. And say we have 49 clubs, we may have 6 that have issues, and we work with them to cure those issues as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
If they can't be cured, we will drop them out of the block grant. But that is what takes the time.
Yeah, and I knew it was something like that. I brought up the comment not as a complaint about the length of time, but more for a lessons learned for anyone that is fairly new to this. Just realize that whoever you're doing the project with, tell whoever you're working with the project with, look, you may not have these funds for 6 months. And so there's an awareness between whoever's receiving the grant and your club that it could be a while.
Yes, and I also want to underscore, you were great in coming back to us and telling us immediately when you realized, hey, they're not going to finish this, and pivoted with options. We had the same issue this year with Louisa. When Louisa received the check, they realized that the approved grant for them was not going to happen. And Pat Hanley came back. He had two options he presented to us. We selected the most compliant one. And, and once that happens, we say yes, then we have to go up to TRF and get their approval again. So, and it worked out great. And you were Johnny on the spot, and I can't tell you how much I appreciated that.
Thank you, Pat.
All right, so we have a couple of questions kind of sitting in the, Mark, I'm going to leave your question for last and let Pat answer that one. It's a little bit more philosophical than me. Another question, Pat, you might want to address this one from Jeffrey. It says, what happens regarding clubs with their own foundation for including club funds of their own? You're muted, Pat. Pat, you're on mute.
Your club's foundation can contribute to your grant projects. But what can't happen is for your club to turn over the grant money to your foundation and turn over the project to your foundation and let them handle it. Because then it's not a club project. You have donated to another nonprofit, and they may have a different schedule, and their board also, I mean, legally could change the nature of the project. So you've got to maintain full control.
Pat, can you clarify, did you say you can turn it over to your foundation or you cannot?
Cannot.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I heard correctly.
Yes, cannot. You have to maintain it in the club. You have to maintain control of the funds in the club, and you are responsible for managing your outside partnerships.
Perfect. Okay. There's a lot of calls for people to do joint projects. So we'll hopefully, Sheila, you'll be able to put that all together.
Excuse me, this is Pat Hanley.
Oh, Pat,
question.
thank you.
And thank you, Pat, for helping me out. Can we reimburse expenses incurred before we received the check or before the block grant was approved?
No, am I off? Yes. Okay. The process is that we have to submit the block grant and we have to be able to get approval from TRF for that block grant and all the grants that are in there. As soon as that happens, we advise all the clubs and we tell them that at this point, which we verify, we have to ask permission and get it from TRF, but we do so. And we will say, hey, the grant has been approved. You can now begin your projects if the club has the money to, pay forward and before they receive the district grant money. Many clubs don't have that, so they've got to wait till the money comes in.
Thank you. Sheila,
So just to clarify, so that means that we're participating in a project that's going on the whole school year.
Yeah.
One phase of the project has completed before we received the check or the block grant was approved. Can we reimburse any expense for that phase?
Technically, no, but Pat, let's talk about that offline.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Sheila, I see your hand, and then I'll move forward.
I just want to put a message out there to all the clubs as you're getting ready to start working on your midterm reports. please call me if you have any questions or if you want to go through it together. Please get a hold of me. Don't struggle on your own. They're very simple to do. I will gladly walk through them with you. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, what Rotary grants cannot cover, or generally do not cover, is you can't pay salaries. You can't use this to offset the cost of deploying those trained under TRF grants. I'm gonna let you read through that example. You may not use this a recipient group for any general administrator or overhead expense of that group. And in most cases, you cannot use this for building projects. Some exceptions can be made. If any of these are part of your grant, be sure you ask questions of the chair, of Pat, to get the clarification. So I'm going to go to Donna and then Peter.
Yeah.
And we'll move forward.
I was wondering, Pat, I know you can't guarantee when the money will become available, but I remember when Lena and I were working on our grant for El Salvador, Lena being aware of the grant process, we knew not to schedule any expensive money till maybe, September, October, November. Historically, when do people usually get the money so they can write their proposal knowing not to incur expenses too early? Do you have a recommended month that it usually comes in?
Yeah, I really encourage clubs not to get involved in a project earlier than mid-September. Now, and then the project has to be completed by May 1st. If you are involved with like your high schools and identifying and selecting scholarships for high school students, then, please contact me. We have a process of how you'd be able to do that and meet all those terms.
Guys, excuse me for interrupting, but Sarah John has had her hand raised for a significant amount of time with a question.
Sorry. All right, Sarah.
Oh gosh, Stink, is this
There
Sarah?
goes. I'm so sorry. Yes. And I'm so sorry. I couldn't find the hand symbol to raise it.
Okay.
This goes back a couple of lines to Andrew's comment. The limit on who can be involved in a district grant, the financial limit for the grant, can create it so that you cannot find partners. We were doing a school district project here for Title I schools. We could easily have involved another Title I school with club, but we had already hit the maximum amount that a district grant could apply for. So we weren't permitted to include more clubs for more going on within the district. And I don't know how we can get around that. I'm wondering if we can have some sort of an easily accessible directory of projects that are out there that would love to have additional partners. That's one possibility. And the other is to find a way around that limit. If we are doing something here in our district, or if, for instance, we're going to do, I'm not quite sure what's meant by disaster grant, but there is a major disaster going on in the second largest city in the country, and we might want to do a grant to help them.
Okay, the issue of limited funds in district or even global grants. As a club, and especially a club that's leading a multi-club project, clubs can add more than 10%. So they have the 3,500 plus the 350 that they're obligated on, and they can add more money to that. That is usual and customary. So there's no limit on what additional funds your clubs may wish to add, whether they do that from the club.
There is a limit on how many clubs we can partner with. That $3,500 that Andrew Wade said could not be used because they didn't get asked to join on a grant. We could easily have added him
Oh,
to our
I see
grant,
what you,
but
no,
we
what
had
you're,
hit the maximum.
yes, yes, you're asking, you're saying clubs that don't participate, therefore leaving money on the table. We don't know what clubs are or are not participating until you file.
We would have liked to, we would have been happy to have
Okay.
more than the 6 clubs on our grant.
Yes, of
But we had
course.
hit a maximum for what could be applied for.
Right. And the process is you got to outreach early to tell all the clubs what you're doing. And we're going to try to make that process
the question.
easier for all clubs. Next question. Thank you though, Sarah. Peter?
Yeah, just 2 things quick. Pat, could you cover, because something I think kind of covers what she just said. There is a limit when we've talked before. The district grants can't be compiled to exceed what the requirement is for a global grant. In other words, they've got to be careful on that because you've got to go for a global grant then if you're exceeding it. That's number one. And number two, if you'd also hit, because I saw in the comments, someone was talking about, well, you could put the district grant in, say, for shelter box. But my understanding is you cannot be a pass-through. In other words, the money you take must be something your club or the clubs
Correct.
are doing a project. It's not just taking the money and giving it to someone else.
Correct. Correct. Exactly right, Peter. You do not get district grant money so you can be a donor to someone else, and that someone else entity does whatever they want with your money. Because A, that's not a project, okay, right? It's just a donation. That isn't what district grant money is for. A second thing is Rotary is really pressing for district grants to be used locally. Now, our district has a rich history in the back of allowing and having people use district grant money for global projects, for international projects. The rule we have now is you can use a district grant to lift up a new global project that you're going to make a global grant project in two years, in 2 or 3 years, no more than 3. If on that international project you gather $25,000 or more in district grant money, that has to convert over to a global grant. You cannot keep that grant in the district grant system. And the reason for that is very simple: accountability. There is additional accountability with global grants that does not exist in district grants. And Rotary is experiencing some significant challenges in districts and clubs who have used that money on a global basis. So we have to convert it to a global grant. And we'll work with you on that. Any other questions?
There's one other. When are the MOUs going to be due? And then I'll finish up these last couple slides so we can try to end as close to on time as possible.
Yes, the MOUs will be issued, let me see, probably in March. And because we'll send you out the schedule of part 2 and the mandatory attendance for the Rotary Foundation Club giving goals, and putting that in the My Rotary. Okay, 10%, Robin, let's use the figure we had this year. The district is giving clubs that qualify and apply $3,500 to do their district grant. You as a club agree that on top of the $3,500, your club will add at least $350 to it.
And that's not a new requirement. That's been.
No, that's been the requirement since district grants existed.
Correct. All right, just to quickly, what they also do not cover, you can't change the defined project. We talked about that. If you're going to do something different or have to do something different, that has to come up to be approved. You cannot give the money to your own foundation to execute the grant. You cannot use it as part of a fundraising effort of another organization, and you cannot use it to support a foreign exchange student. It's particularly high school, because there are other funds that are designated for that and different processes that we need to follow for exchange students. So just be very clear that those are not grants that will get approved if you submit them. And now, any additional questions, Pat is available to answer. Fred, I did see your hand. I don't know if you took it down or if you still have a question.
Sherry, it's Amelia.
Yes,
question for you. Can district grant funds be used for scholarships, whether they're scholarships for college or they're scholarships for technical school or scholarships if somebody was going to a private school, like if they were still in high school, they were doing a private school scholarship stipend?
Amelia, yes, you can. However, what you cannot do is take the district grant and contribute it to an institution for their fundraising for scholarships. So you create a relationship either with the institution that you want to support their scholarship, and you actually create a scholarship that you designate to whatever student it is in the school. So
Okay.
for instance, for us, we participate in Justice High School Foundation program, and we actually have the Rotary of Bailey's Crossroads Scholarship Program, and we have some of our own requirements, and then we work with guidance to identify the 5 students that'll be chosen each year, and then we give that grant.
Thank you.
Eric asks, where do we add our project on the site?
Oh, we're not there yet, but
No, I think he's asking, because I had mentioned, hey, because he was posting about the trail project in the Northern Neck, and I said, hey, go out and put it on the Rotary Service Project support site.
Oh, yes,
Eric,
right.
when you're on there, it's really super simple.
Yeah.
You'll click the button and it'll walk you through how to do it.
Right.
And they took, if anybody had projects that were on the old Rotary Showcase, they've all come onto that page as well. So the Rotary Service Project Center is available for any Rotarian in the world to look at, as well as the public. So if somebody's out looking for a project, or if you're looking for inspiration, you can go out and look for inspiration, or see, hey, here's a ready-made project that we just want to partner with somebody else somewhere else. You can do that as well. So it's a great way to be able to highlight and showcase the different projects, but it's very straightforward to be able to walk through. If you need help, just reach out to me directly. I'm happy to walk you through it rather than doing it on here.
Thank you.
Right.
You're
Katie
welcome.
had a question that at what point will we know that the grant is approved? This year, the grant approval came pretty late because we had a couple of grants that were non-compliant. So we had to get them all fixed and get them resubmitted. So generally, it would be sometime in early September, which we would expect to have approval, and then we would send the email, and then we would also then tell you when the checks were received and when they were sent out. This year was exceptional, Katie. We had a hard time getting the district grant block approved in this year. So really important to make sure your grants are compliant with what we've talked about. Reach out early if you have any question whether or not it's going to be compliant. And then if the district says it's not, quickly work on how you can retool that grant to make sure it is compliant, because you will hold the district grant for the entire district if we don't make those changes. Let me see.
One other Rotary the clarification: can we get the 10% that the club is supposed to donate to the district grant from our foundation? No. Your foundation can donate to your grant to give you more money, but they are asking 10% from the club. Does that clarify it?
Steve has a question, and then Leanne.
So the foundation give it to the club, and then the club puts it in the project?
Well, the person was asking the 10% first.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, the 10% has to come from the club. If your club foundation wants to donate in addition to that to give a higher amount, they can. But Rotary is asking the club to give the 10%.
Steve, I see
Fred,
your hand.
if I could, Fred, I think your question was, can your foundation donate to the club and the club donate the 10% to the club? According to our accountants, our foundation cannot donate to our
Right.
club operating account.
Okay.
Correct. And
Thank you.
because you're pushing it up, and it violates your C3 status as a foundation.
Okay.
Okay, now Steve.
The
Hold on,
other,
he's got his hand
actually,
up.
the other question I have, I don't know whether it has been
Fred, could you hold
answered
for
because-
1 minute, please? Because Steve has had his head up for quite some time, and I'll come back to you, I promise.
Okay, sure.
Real quick, if we have a club who did not attend today, they're not eligible, but are they eligible to cede what would be their district grant share to another club?
No.
So the money just poof, it's gone.
Not at this time. And by the way, the one thing I did want to say, as I said, there'll be an additional schedule for future Zooms and in-person programs, and again, the mandatory grant program is 3 elements. This is part 1. Part 2 is going to get more involved in your global grant, your scholarship grants, your Peace Fellow grants, and again, some additional detail of compliance. Then the third part will be the foundation, creating your foundation donation schedule and amount that the club has to put in My Rotary Club Central each year. And we will have a program for that. And then once your club, and it doesn't have to be the same person from the club, you can have 3 different people, but you've got to collectively report all that information in, then you will be qualified.
Right, but if you didn't participate today, you're out of it, and your
Correct.
$3,500
They don't
just
know. Correct.
doesn't exist for anybody.
Well, it goes back, we have it in the surplus contingency and things.
The district
right,
will get
but
to
it's
use
not gonna
those
wind
funds
up
for
to a
other
club,
clubs.
it's gonna
It
go to
won't
the
go to
district.
that.
Correct. Yeah,
Correct.
no, if
Thank you.
a club isn't complying, they have no money.
Well, I'm not concerned about that club getting it. I was wondering if another club could
Designate,
get
right,
it.
right. And again, we don't know that to the end.
Yes. Unused district grant funds flip over to the global grant side. It's not gone.
Well,
yeah,
it is if you want to do something in the district.
Right.
Thanks. That answered me.
Right.
Leanne, you've had your hand up for quite some time.
Hi, thank you. Yes, so one of the questions I have, so let's say you have a grant open right now. For some reason you didn't get to use all your funds. It's a twofold question. One, if it's under one of Rotary's areas of focus, do you have to, let's say there was another project you're able to do, but it's still under that same area of focus. Are you able to then apply those funds with permission to a different project, as long as it's under the same area of focus that you got approved for?
You can send us an email and we'll discuss that. It could be possible.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Fred, back to you.
Yeah,
and then Sarah, I'll get you.
Please,
thank you.
please use the hint. Great, terrific. Okay.
Thank you. 2 quick questions. One, how can we put in a multi-year district grant? For example, if we do a project this year and we get the district grant for this year, but we know that project continues for another year, another 2 years. How do we apply for that? We know it's a local project that's going to cover more than 1 year.
Fred, I would say, let's discuss that. We have had, I'd call it a club intending to have a district grant project over, 1 or 2 years. So it would be this year it's phase 1, we're going to do that. Next year it's phase 2, we're going to do that. The following year it's phase 3, because again, each year the monies change,
Okay.
Based upon what people give.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The other question is really for me wondering, because you said that any club that didn't send somebody to this part 1 is literally disqualified. But this session has been recorded.
Right.
Why is it recorded if it cannot be used for those who could not attend?
Right. Now, the mandatory grant program is going to be repeated. So there will be an additional opportunity for clubs who did not attend this program to attend the second iteration of this program. And the reason that we don't just use the video is we're having a Q&A discussion. People need clarification, and they're not going to be able to get that if all they're doing is looking at a screen. And we also don't have certainty of their participation.
Sarah?
Okay.
That's this, Sarah.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Sherry. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. So for someone coming in as a tabula rasa, and this is all, I feel like this was at the 30,000 foot level. Who is the best person in the district with whom to speak, to ask my questions, to bounce things off of, to try and move forward? I don't know if you know, Sherry, I'm gonna try in the next couple years to take over for Roy Stroll and Russ Lloyd. And they did some pretty significant stuff at the foundation level, and I don't feel qualified at all. And I don't even know half of the stuff we're talking about. So
Right.
who is my best person to contact?
Well,
So I'm actually your AFA, Sarah. So I would be a great place to start.
Awesome.
But there's also all the resources on the screen that are depending on what kind of grant you're interested in.
Did see that.
And
I have no
so
interest in a grant, but I do want to help my club get a grant. I want them to see their dreams move forward.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And
So you can start with me or Pat even.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pat.
All right. Perfect answer. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Bye.
Pat, did
Peter?
you want to say something else? I'm really sorry I cut you off.
No. You said it perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah. Peter, anybody else have their hand up? I don't know.
Peter, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. I just want to make one quick point, because when you were talking about the block grant and curing them, were talking about those are the ones that are submitted for next year. Key point here is because it's a block grant, and we've had this happen in the past, if the clubs do not submit their final report on time, the grant for next year can't even be submitted, or I will not take it. You have to submit the final report for that block grant, which is one of the things that has really held us up sometimes. So one club can really screw up everything if they don't turn in their report on time. So it's twofold there. I just want to make that point.
Yes, and thank you, Peter, because this year, the grant it was delayed, in my opinion. But the bottom line was we had 10 clubs that did not submit their final reports until May 20th and later. And this is another thing I want to make very clear. It is the club that is applying for this grant. It is the club that is responsible for the execution of this grant. It is not, well, Pat talked us into it. It's Pat's project and Pat's problem. It is the club's grant, and it is the club that makes sure that grant is being done, the compliance is being met timely and accurately. So we had that issue. And then we had, for the new submission, we had about 10 clubs that needed to do further work on their submissions in order for them to comply. And we had to actually drop 2 clubs completely out because, they were taking too long, but.
And Pat, on that note too, the reason we want more than one person, you just hit a good point. It's the club's responsibility to come back to the district and say, oh, well, Joe Smith was the guy running it. He's left the club this year, so we don't know where the receipts are. It's a club responsibility. It's not that individual. I mean, it's his too, but that's why we need multiple people in a club to be overseeing that project.
Thank you, Peter. Well, listen, I know we could talk and talk and talk, and I'm available. All of us on here are available to you at any time. There will be more information that is coming to you. I am so pleased that we had so many people, and additionally that you stayed over time because we were supposed to end at noon. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you always for choosing Rotary, for being people of action. And thank you for your donations. And thank you for supporting this. And go out there and get us more money and go out there and get us more donors, because that's how we do more doing good in the world, in our own backyard and globally. So thank you. You did a wonderful program, everybody, because it's your program. Your questions make this up. Thank you.
Thank you for hiring us up.